If the far right get a big showing, then undoubtedly there's going to be big demonstrations. And they often end up in violence and chaos. We could see this going on for weeks. Of course, there's the Olympic Games starting in just 3 weeks in Paris. There's 30,000 police officers been drafted in for security for this second round of elections, 5,000 in Paris alone. People have been battening up the hatches and shops, putting on barricades in the town centre, worried about violence. So we'll have to see. It's a really uncertain time. The turnout at midday was just over 26%, which might not sound very high, but you have to go back to 1981 to get a similar turnout. Turnout's been dropping steadily in French elections as people become more and more disillusioned with, all the parties, really. And this is despite the fact that this is the first weekend of the school summer holidays. So millions and millions of people, a record number actually, registered to do a proxy vote, and they've been rushing to find someone to do that for them. So there is big turnout. The question now is, who will that affect? It depends where that high turnout lands, really, because it could be supporters of Marine Le Pen, the RN, the Rassemblement National, coming to boost her score, or it could be people coming to try and block the far right getting into power. We don't know, and the pollsters are having a pretty difficult time of predicting what it will mean, to be honest.
I'm looking here at some predictions, but most polls are putting Marine Le Pen's party between 170 and 215 seats. Well, that's 80 seats short of an overall majority, which is 289 seats. Might there be a suggestion that there could be a rainbow coalition to be formed against Marine Le Pen's party?
Yeah, could be one of the options if any party fails to get the 289 absolute majority in Parliament. So the coalition, it could take place technically. It's quite hard to see in reality how that would work, given that, not many parties would work with Marine Le Pen's party. Only half of Les Républicains, the Conservative Party, would do so. They wouldn't get enough probably to go into government. So you'd be looking at the centrist party of Emmanuel Macron, which is very unpopular, plus some of the left and the Greens. But the problem is that some of the left-wing parties absolutely despise Emmanuel Macron, and vice versa. And there are some really hard left parties in that left-wing coalition who people on the centre simply don't want to work with. So it really depends on the numbers. We can imagine perhaps there's going to be days or weeks of wrangling to try and get some kind of coalition government or a technocrat government to keep the country going, because we haven't seen this before in France. This is uncharted waters, and no one's really sure what can happen, apart from the fact that Macron can't call another round of snap elections for at least a year. So we could be in this for a while.
So there could be negotiations indefinitely, well, for at least 1 year, you're saying, that we could have people trying to form some sort of government.
Yeah, that's right. And it could be very messy indeed, because there's a great deal of animosity. And there's no legal time limit within the French constitution as to when you have to form a government for. So if it is a coalition, it could be very messy because of all the complications that I've spoken about. And what you could have is some kind of minority coalition government trying to put forward laws which could be voted down by all the other parties. I think things could get very heated indeed.
Tell us a little bit what you're saying, not just in Parliament. Are you suggesting that there might be civil unrest in the streets of France?
If the far right get a big showing, then undoubtedly there's going to be big demonstrations. They often end up in violence and chaos. We could see this going on for weeks. Of course, there's the Olympic Games starting in just 3 weeks in Paris. There's 30,000 police officers been drafted in for security for this second round of elections, 5,000 in Paris alone. People have been battening up the hatches and shops, putting on barricades in the town centre, worried about violence. So we'll have to see. It's a really uncertain time.
Just one final question, Catherine. President Macron's been criticised for calling this election. Looking at this from his point of view, how does this play with Macron and his plan? Some people said that his original thinking might have been, well, straight after the EU elections, if the Marine Le Pen's party is that popular, let's put that to the test. And if they want to govern with the 3 years that he's got left as president, they're welcome to do so. The thinking being that he was hoping that they would do a bad job of governing, and therefore by the time the presidential election comes around, Marine Le Pen's chances of winning that presidency would be reduced if they've had an unsuccessful 3 years in government. If he gets an unclear result, what does that mean for President Macron?
I don't think it's going to be good news for President Macron, because basically the far right could come out and say, look, we have the biggest support in terms of percentage points among the French population, but you put together a coalition to come and block us and made the country ungovernable for 12 months. You plunged this country into chaos. So that could really play into their hands, rather than, as Macron probably hoped, taking the wind out of their sails. A lot of people in France, and whatever side of politics they're on, really, even people in his own party, are angry with the president, very frustrated with him for having deliberately decided to call these snap elections. He didn't have to at all, and provoke this political instability and chaos. So his approval ratings, which were already really, really low, have plunged even further. And he could be playing into the hands of the far right by saying, look, you saw what happened when we nearly got to power. They clubbed together, the elites, the political establishment clubbed together and blocked us. If you want us in power, you have to vote for us very clearly in the 2027 presidential elections.